Hello and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. On behalf of OTC Markets, we're very pleased you have joined us for our 3-day metal mining conference. Our next presentation is from Callinex Mines. Please note you may submit questions for the presenter in the box to the left of the slides. You can also view the company's availability for one-on-one meetings by click Book a Meeting in the top toolbar. At this point, I'm very pleased to welcome Max Porterfield, President and Chief Executive Officer of Callinex Mines, which trades on the OTCQX Best Market under the symbol CLLXF and on the TSXV under the symbol CNX. Welcome, Max.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate everyone's time today. Again, I'm Max Porterfield, President and CEO of Callinex Mines, where we're expanding high-grade gold and copper deposits in Canadian mining jurisdictions that we'll go over today, which I'm very excited about. With that being said, we will talk about some forward-looking information, and here's the disclosure around all those for the quick readers out there today. And just to jump into things, for those that aren't familiar with Callinex as a whole, we have a portfolio of base and precious metals-rich VMS deposits located within key Canadian mining jurisdictions, which again, you have the pedigree of the geology, which puts these deposits there. VMS deposits occur in clusters and make up mining districts on a global basis. And with that being said, those discoveries historically have led to that infrastructure in place, which reduces our upfront hurdles as we advance our discoveries to a production decision. With that being said, our portfolio is outlined by numerous assets across Canada. Today we'll be focused predominantly on our Point Leamington deposit, which is a gold, copper, zinc deposit in Newfoundland, Canada, as well as our Rainbow and other discoveries at our Pine Bay camp in Manitoba. But we're also backstopped by a zinc lead asset in New Brunswick, Canada as well. Again, a key focus is on high-grade polymetallic deposits in proximity infrastructure that start near surface, which the entirety of our portfolio is really earmarked by that. So jumping into things in Newfoundland, Canada, Newfoundland's a great jurisdiction overall. Canada as a whole has always been marked as one of the top jurisdictions on a global basis, really being a tier 1 jurisdiction. And then within Canada, obviously there's some brighter spots than others, and Newfoundland is certainly one of those places. It benefits from, again, one of the top 10 jurisdictions globally, and this is a multi-year running accomplishment for Newfoundland by the Fraser Institute. And that is supported by that rich history of mining, the rule of law within Newfoundland, the permitting regime that's very favorable for mining, and that's testament to all the exploration and current and as well as past producing mines, as I mentioned earlier, within the province of Newfoundland. It also benefits from clean hydroelectric power. So as we advance things into production, having the readily available clean hydroelectric power is really going to propel us forward as we look to meet the world's needs as we move away from the hydrocarbon or oil and gas, more simply said, and replace that with the metals, in particular, copper as it relates to the battery metal side of things. So with Point Leamington deposit's very unique, and we're going to go through the history of Point Leamington, but the deposit sits within a mineral lease, very similar to what we have in Manitoba with our discoveries at our Pine Bay camp. So there's advanced permitting that it sits within the mineral lease, and there's also a very large 43101 compliant resource that's near surface, and that resource is split between an in-pit resource as well as an out-of-pit resource. And the majority of that is going to be in-pit, separated both from the higher confidence indicated category and inferred. So within the pit-constrained resource, you're looking just shy of 19 million tons. And then when you include that out-of-pit resource, it puts us past 20 million tons. So a very large deposit starts right near surface there within that mineral lease that's open for exploration. As we go through the presentation today and discuss the history, it really will show that Point Leamington and the deposit itself stands out. And I should also mention it's about 35 kilometers away from the community of Grand Falls, Windsor, and accessible from road and trail access. And beyond the deposit itself, we've also staked a number of areas based upon our 2,400 lines of airborne data for isolated anomalies or targets that sit in the same geologic pedigree that would host a deposit like the Point Leamington deposit sits today. So jumping into things, also, it makes sense to really understand the history of Point Leamington. Point Leamington dates back, was first mapped in 1953 by Newmont, and it was followed up and explored by Phelps Dodge, who flew an airborne survey in 1967. Following the airborne survey in 1967, Noranda had the property and actually drill tested those targets that were there, one of them. And the most significant, which of course was Point Leamington, which was discovered in 1971. Now, Noranda held Point Leamington as it expanded the discovery from 1971 all the way up until 1998 when Rubicon acquired it from Noranda. And you got to keep in mind the metal prices at this time were, gold prices was much, much lower than today. And we'll go through that a bit. But then immediately the following year after Rubicon optioned or acquired it, they turned around and optioned it to BHP. And BHP had a 70-30 earn-in whereby BHP was going to earn in 70% to take it to construction. And then they chose not to follow through with that option, and it was later picked up by TLC Ventures. And TLC is the last company, believe it or not, to conduct exploration at Point Leamington, and that dates back to 2004. So you're looking at over 20 years or 2 decades since last exploration. And that's in a time when it was a very successful exploration campaign. The 5 holes, 2,400 meters, expanded the known deposit area, as well as hit a new zone along strike to the south. And then the property sat again dormant for about another decade, and it was the IPO asset for Newmarket. Newmarket only drilled 2 holes and did very limited metallurgical work on those 2 holes. And then they immediately had the opportunity to move to Australia, and they had a lot of success there. Were ultimately acquired by Kirkland Lake. And we actually picked up Point Leamington from Newmarket within months before their eventual acquisition by Kirkland Lake. And we've held it within the portfolio, while we're obviously focusing on others, the portfolio given the opportunity. And when we acquired Point Leamington, it was really the mindset that it was a cheap option call on the metals market, where again, the deposit itself was out of favor based upon the metal market environment at the time. When we acquired Point Leamington in 2016, you were looking at a gold price environment of $1,250 an ounce gold. You're looking at copper that was roughly low 2s, and zinc was sub 70 cents a pound. And today, as you've seen what's occurred over the last really 12 months, but in particular year to date in the precious metal space in particular, you have gold today north of $3,300 an ounce. Copper is very, very strong here, around 420 a pound, and zinc strengthened far beyond the 70 cents a pound when we acquired it to $1.20 a pound. Eventually, we updated the resource to encompass the open pit and then underground nature of the deposit, given that it sits right at surface, and I'll show you that. And that was done in 2021. Now, recently, with the significant move in metal prices, it's made become more glaringly obvious that it makes the most sense for ourselves to advance Point Leamington moving forward, based upon the metal price environment that we're in. So if you look at what's changed, the in situ value of Point Leamington over the past 12 months now dwarfs the high-grade copper resource we've built over the past 4 years in Manitoba by almost 2-fold. So moving forward, as we look to expand the Point Leamington deposit and drive it forward, it's going to be a 3-pronged approach, where it's going to be focused on exploration of and growing the deposit beyond where it sits today on that 43101 resource. We want to test those isolated airborne anomalies that I mentioned. And then last but not least is in the next program, as part of this broader program, we'll be collecting samples to begin really refining the metallurgical process and path to the recovery of those metals, with a particular focus, for obvious reasons, on the gold component of the Point Leamington deposit. As it sits, Point Leamington within the pit has over 500,000 ounces of gold, and of course the big move in golds really profoundly changed the value of that deposit over the last 12 months. So again, a three-pronged approach is going to be focused on exploration, both at the deposit, in the immediate area with those isolated airborne targets that we've identified, and then again, nail down the metallurgical process to refine that. At the conclusion of that, it's going to be a multi-phase program to that end. At the conclusion of nailing down the metallurgical work, we're going to be at a unique position to very quickly transition to economic studies for Point Leamington, and then of course focus on expanding based upon the success of the exploration campaign in tandem to that work. So I'm just going to show you a brief 3D view of what the Point Leamington deposits looks like at surface. As you can see, it's got a significant strike extent. It comes right near surface. It's quite steeply dipping. And what we have wrapped around that is the pit constrained, the pit. So everything that you see coming out of that pit is the out of pit resource, and everything that sits within that pit as again, of course, obviously the in-pit resource where the bulk, as you can see from this image, sits within pit. So it being an open pit operation is a much more simple mining methodology or approach from an engineering perspective than certainly an underground operation. And ultimately, I think there can be some cost synergies and savings being an open pit operation where we're located here in Newfoundland. I'm going to jump over and show you a long section just to kind of show you again, this is the in-pit resource, the out-of-pit resource, and again, you're hitting some very high grades on the last exploration holes that were drilled at Point Leamington, as I mentioned in 2014. You're looking at almost 5 meters over 4 gram per ton gold, 15% zinc, nearly 2 ounce silver, 0.4 copper, and along strike from that again over 2 gram per ton gold, 8% zinc, over 2 ounce silver, over 0.5% copper. So exceptionally high grades of mineralization. And I should also highlight how shallow exploration has been historically at Point Leamington. Really within the first 400 meters of surface is where the kind of the depth of exploration on the deposit. And when you compare it to what we've done in other parts of Canada at our Pine Bay camp in Manitoba, where we started that discovery at 900 meters vertical depth. So again, the Point Leamington deposit starts right at surface, down to roughly the 400 meter level, just shot up a little bit deeper than that, and remains open at depth, and an area that we believe that we can strongly improve the resource beyond what we have to date. And again, if you look at the last results that TLC had in 2004, it's certainly earmarked to that, or kind of highlights that opportunity. And so as it sits again, Point Leamington is a sizable resource as is. It's over 20 million tons. Here's the breakdown of that. But I just want to highlight to you the total in the indicated and inferred category here, over 500,000 ounces here at Point Leamington of gold, which is a significant contributor to the metal endowment of that deposit. So we're very eager to get that work started. With that being said, we just wrapped up our exploration campaign in Manitoba not too long ago, and it started permitting at our Rainbow deposit, which is our flagship discovery at our Pine Bay camp. So the Pine Bay camp sits in proximity to a community of Flin Flon, Manitoba. Again, very similar to what we discussed in Newfoundland, in that you've got a long history of mining. In this instance, you have 32 mines that span over a century. You've got hydroelectric power. You have a mineral lease just like you have in Newfoundland. And we've got emerging high-grade copper discoveries where in Newfoundland we're more gold dominant. In Manitoba, we're more copper dominant, where the Rainbow, for example, is over 90% copper. So in terms of that, Rainbow sits at 4.7 million tons of some of the highest grade copper on a global basis. If you look at the mine global average grade of copper mined around the world, you're looking less than 0.5% today. So with that being said, Rainbow truly stands out to that end. We've delineated the Rainbow discovery from, as I mentioned earlier, from 900 meters underground all the way up to within 90 meters of surface. And we've, again, established that resource as of July 2023 when we announced that 4.7 million tons. And when you put that next to the Pine Bay deposit, which is a sister discovery, a deposit that sits, in close proximity to Rainbow, you're looking at just shy of 6 million tons of high-grade copper. And I'll quantify what that means in relation to other mines in the immediate area. But where we are with Pine Bay and the Rainbow discovery as of right now, we've submitted for an advanced exploration permit, which will allow us to ramp down to the deposit, which you can see a preliminary underground mine arrangement on the image on the screen here. And what we envision is that being the platform for a 10,000 ton bulk sample of the Rainbow deposit via that ramp, which will allow us to get and confirm the mineral continuity, widths, other characteristics, as well as, of course, grades and processing of the recoveries on a broader scale from the Rainbow deposit. So again, and beyond that, it will create a platform for underground drilling and help reduce costs. So the AEP application is underway. Could be a 12 to 18 month process. So we're patiently awaiting that. Now, with that being said, as I mentioned, scale, what you're looking at here is the past producing mines in the Flin Flon area, in the Flin Flon Greenstone Belt, which is again a VMS camp, no different than what you see in Newfoundland at Point Leamington. And where we're at today is we're at just shy of 6 million tons. And what you're comparing it to in red is the initial reserves, and then blue on the screen on each one of those individual mines is the added reserves after they went into production. So you see a significant resource growth in Manitoba and beyond once you get into mining these VMS deposits, and you can conduct underground exploration more effectively, both from on an operational standpoint and, of course, from a cost perspective as well. But where we sit today at 6 million, just shy of 6 million tons, really puts us in rarefied air with other past producers in the area. So we're quite pleased, and we're going to be patient as we await the AEP. Meanwhile, us focusing on Point Leamington. And just to wrap things up on cap structure, we have just over 19 million shares outstanding, no debt on the balance sheet. We've got great institutional and corporate support as well. We more recently brought on Tech Resources as a shareholder of the company. 1832 has been a long-term shareholder, as well as McKinsey, which are really household names from institutional shareholders in Canada. So quite pleased with that, and really excited about what's to come in this 2025 exploration as we shift our focus to Point Leamington to really drive significant value out of that deposit and in return for our shareholders. And I will touch on real quickly our team. Our team's got a track record of success of exploration and development of mines, and we're actually going to be broadening that team rather significantly over the coming weeks. With that being said, we're going to be adding some key expertise in metallurgy, and of course, metallurgy being one of the focal points for the work that we're going to be doing at Point Leamington. We've really recruited what I would argue is some of the best metallurgists on a global basis, with the core expertise of using innovation, technology, and new approaches to the economic recovery of metals, in particular with gold. And they've got a heck of a track record to support that, which again we'll be announcing in the near future. In addition to that, we'll be bolstering our geological knowledge on the Point Leamington deposit in particular, but on VMS exploration as well in the near future. So we're always adding and strengthening our team, and doing so at a key time where we need to use that expertise to unlock value with the work that we're doing. And again, you can have the greatest asset in the world, but you need the people that are going to unlock and create that value, which we're so eager and excited about doing at Point Leamington and beyond our expanded our portfolio, as I have alluded to earlier throughout the presentation today. So with that being said, Callinex is really in a great position with the metal markets behind us. I think we've really got the wind behind our sails, so to speak, and that will, I think, start to percolate through overall investor sentiment throughout the sector in general. We've got a tight capital structure that's really well positioned in this type of market environment as we're going to expand and grow our high-grade discoveries with a keen focus on doing so at Point Leamington, as I've alluded to before. and the people are the other pillar to that that's going to be conducting that work this year. So with that being said, I appreciate everybody's time over the first 20 minutes, and then we'll leave a bit of time to answer any potential questions over the next 5-10 minutes if there's a lot of questions to that end, or if I did an excellent job, maybe there's not too many. So with that, again, Max Porterfield, President and CEO of Callinex Mines. We trade on the Toronto Venture under the ticker CNX, and on the OTCQX, which is kind enough to welcome us today to be a part of this online conference to share our story under the ticker CLLXF. And with that being said, I'm going to look to jump into it. So there's one question is regarding what are the milestones to the end of the year and any capital needs to support that. In terms of milestones, again, we want to immediately get to work at Point Leamington, and that work's already been done behind the scenes in terms of outlining the process and plan for a multi-phase metallurgical program that will commence once we've gathered that material. And then obviously on the exploration front, we want to test targets within the Point Leamington deposit area, as well as expand our exploration footprint and make a new, I would say, discoveries. I like to always shoot for the stars there, to dramatically grow our near surface high-grade resource out at our Point Leamington deposit moving forward. In terms of capital requirements, obviously capital requirements are an important part of our business, and we will be addressing that as everyone in the exploration business does, in raising additional capital to facilitate the work that we've got outlined before us, and continue to top that out as necessary, no different than we've had over the past decade of operations. So that's that question. In terms of infrastructure needs at Point Leamington is a question that's come in. Long-term infrastructure needs, obviously you want to bolster the road system out to the deposit area right now. There's actually access from the southern part as well as from the northern part, and that would just need to be extended and strengthened from a mining operation perspective. But in terms of our needs, immediate needs to conduct exploration, there's no upgraded infrastructure necessary to that end. Longer term, you'd want to run hydroelectric power through some sort of substation out to site. So again, you have power in the area, clean power. I should also mention, besides hydroelectric power, there's actually a wind generated power, and there's a windmill that's within about a kilometer probably of Point Leamington, so very, very close proximity to that end. And then there's a question, just going through the questions in terms of, do we have any drill programs planned for 2025? I hope I've tried to allude that today. We are going to have a exploration campaign planned in 2025 that's going to be at our Point Leamington project. Will encompass, again, expanding the Point Leamington deposit, testing new targets that are isolated airborne anomalies that fit in the right pedigree to host other deposits like Point Leamington. And I should again mention and repeat that these occur in clusters of VMS deposits. Point Leamington is the only VMS deposit that has been discovered in that immediate area, and I think there's right potential to discover many more. And as we conduct that exploration, we're going to be looking to acquire and obtain the samples necessary for that multi-phase metallurgical testing that once completed will really refine down the recovery and the plan and the process for the recovery of those metals, which will then in turn allow us to begin work at any given time in the future when that's completed on economic studies. We may pause pause doing a PEA and choose to do additional infill drilling to upgrade the inferred resource into the indicated category, or we might just simply jump into the PEA. But again, we haven't made that decision as of right now, but certainly we got an exciting year for exploration at Point Leamington. And then in terms of another question that's come in on catalyst for a re-rating of Callinex, certainly if you look at the company, we've been focused primarily, well, exclusively on our Pine Bay camp and the discoveries, in particular Rainbow that I mentioned over the past 4 years. With that being said, the rest of the portfolio really hasn't received the appropriate valuation, I believe, from the broader market. And that has to obviously predominantly have to do with the fact that we haven't been advancing them. And so as you look at the backdrop of what's occurred in the metal price environment, and again, I'm a big proponent of the long-term gold prices being here to stay, and that can be debated at length and not for today. We're going to have a revaluation and a re-rating of Callinex based upon the work that we're going to be doing at Point Leamington. And when we are ready to move back and get the work done at our Pine Bay camp in Manitoba, we'll be able to do so, I think, at a much stronger equity valuation, and in turn, that work can be done with a lot less dilution. But as it sits today, what's not being valued in the company is the intrinsic value of the Point Leamington deposit as it sits in this moment, irrespective of what we're about to do with it moving forward. And we're very excited about what's to happen, again, from an exploration perspective, as well as development perspective with our strengthened team that will be announced, again, very, very soon. In terms of, there's a question, is there a will to bring in a strategic partner at this time from financing? Certainly we'll bring a partner when the time is right. I think in this immediate moment, the time is not ideal to bring on a partner, but I definitely do think that after we conduct the work that we're going to be doing in Newfoundland, and put that asset in a position to transition very, very quickly to a construction decision, we'll then be in a position to bring a partner on that asset, and then we can then shift back and drive value on other parts of the portfolio. So certainly that's something that we're have in the back of our mind, and we'll be addressing at the right time as we move things forward with each individual asset within the portfolio. And again, the keen focus, as we've discussed at length, is going to be at Point Leamington and growing that very large near-surface gold, copper, zinc, silver deposit with the drill bit, hitting new discoveries and really nailing down the recovery of those metals. So with that being said, I believe that I've answered all the questions. If anybody has any last moment questions, be happy to address them. If not, I want to reiterate, we are available over the next coming days for one-on-one meetings. Be happy to dive deeper with anybody should you have the interest to do so. And you can click the option there to book a meeting and be eager to continue the conversation offline. And just as a reminder, again, if you're inclined to become a shareholder or add to your position, you can do so on the OTCQX under the ticker CLLXF, or also on our primary listing in Canada on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the ticker CNX. And I want to thank everybody again for all the time today and your keen interest in what we're up to in Canada as we expand our high-grade gold and copper discoveries in these known Canadian mining jurisdictions.